Alright guys, today is the casting lesson. Fishing's a little bit slow, so we're going to talk about how to get the most distance out of your cast. And hopefully that extra couple yards will get you that fish that you've been not reaching out there. But this is some of the technique and some of what goes through my mind when I'm trying to make the furthest possible cast out there, like when we're fishing for Dorado and you see them jumping way out there and you want the furthest cast you can get. These are some of the things that the way I'll set up stuff and some of the techniques I'll use to get that really far cast out there. Start out with the gear that we're using. You want pretty light setup for getting that distance out there. So right now I'm going with, this is a 6,000 size Saltiga, and this is the 13-foot Cabosurfcaster Horizon. It's rated 2 to 8 ounce, and it's super light. With this setup combined right now, I mean, it's, you balance it on the middle there. It's a light setup, and you want to be light because you're going to be throwing quite a bit, and also it plays into getting that distance out there. One of the things that makes a huge difference on getting that distance is the diameter of your braid. So right here I'm using 20-pound braid, and this is the Daiwa X braid right now that we're using, and it's come out good. I've been using it for a little while now and really happy with it. Another thing that makes a huge difference on getting that distance is make sure, I don't know if you guys can see right here, make sure your spool is full. You want a full spool, so almost level with the edge there. Full enough that you're not throwing wind knots, but just underneath that. I mean, you don't want any less line than you can possibly have. If you're a quarter of the way into your spool, like you're down a quarter, it will cut down on your cast by probably 30%. So a third of your cast will be taken off by not having your spool completely full. Make sure you got a full spool when you go to cast far like that. And now into technique. We're using this is a 2.5 ounce lure. This is the jig here. I'm just throwing a simple sardine jig. And what you want to do is have about this much line hanging out of your guide, somewhere between your first and second guide right in here. And what that does is it loads up the rod proportional to where it hangs up against the rod. So this midsection of the rod is what's getting loaded up in the cast. And that's really important because the majority of your power out of a cast comes from loading up that midsection of the rod. If you were to reel this all the way up closer to the tip and you only leave out about this much line out of your tip, all it's doing is loading up the very tip of the rod, and you're missing out on having the length of a big rod like this. So you want to leave out about that much distance. When you set up for your cast, you want to take it from here, set it back behind you on the sand. So you take it and you rock it back away from you. And so you're setting it up at an angle back behind you on the sand. And you want to start out with your rod tip pointed down at the sand, basically almost dragging the sand when you go to cast. So your cast is set up like this. You're angled down, arm extended, left hand clear down at the end of the rod, so you get the most leverage out of your cast when you go to pull down for your cast. And then you extend your right arm all the way out, dragging the tip of the rod there, and then when you go for your cast is okay. You come straight directly overhead, and your release point is right just a little bit above the horizon. Your rod will come over, it whips, and then you release right there. And a big thing that a lot of people don't know when you're making that long cast is when your line is flying out of off the spool, going through those guides, what you want to do is take the tip of your rod and point the tip of your rod right directly at where the line is funneling out of the tip of the rod. So if you got a breeze coming from the side and it's wanting to take and pull your line to the left, you want to point your rod to the left and follow right where it's funneling out of the rod. What that does, reduces the amount of friction of the line on the guides so that your line is just flowing through those guides with as little friction as possible. And So you're wanting to always, right after your cast, bring your rod tip back up and follow that trajectory, and that'll make your lure cruise just a few extra yards out there and get you that perfect cast. So that's a couple techniques. I know a lot of you guys get into pendulum casting and stuff, and that laying your lure back on the sand behind you helps you be able to load up your rod sort of like that. So yeah, if you guys have any other cool techniques for casting, let me know. There's not too many guys who are at casting me on the beach, at least here. I know a lot of the East Coast guys are, but those are my tips for today. All right, one last tip for positioning yourself for the cast. Think of it as if you are a pitcher in baseball, and if you were pitching towards home plate, and home plate would be directly at you like this. If you were going to pitch a ball towards home plate, you wouldn't be facing home plate to pitch the ball. So when you go to cast, you don't want to be facing the water. You want to be facing sideways. And so I'm actually turned the opposite way right now, but if the water was this way, you would want to be facing perpendicular to the water. And then you're lining up your cast. If the water is this way, facing this way, your cast is turning like this. So you rotate your shoulders into the cast when you go, and by the time your cast goes off, you're facing the water once you make your cast. But when you start off your cast, you want to be perpendicular to the water and step into it. So you're just like a pitcher would step into a cast. Take one step and step into your cast to get that maximum load up in the rod. So that's one more good tip for just how to position yourself on the beach.